Well, good morning, and good morning to you, Mr. Smith. It's good to be with you today. We have a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about good morning to you, Dr. Farris, and a lot to talk about in a very emotionally charged subject.
Indeed, yeah, indeed it is. Yeah, I was actually pondering how to approach this subject for several days. How do I approach this subject with you? We've had a history, a good history, and we've had fun, and um, it's interesting when I think about this issue that we're about to talk about. We're talking broadly about race and socioeconomic situations and some challenges there, particularly in our own context in the US. And so that our history, there's a lot that goes into this discussion. There's a lot. There's a tremendous amount. This
Absolutely.
is interesting. It's a difficult discussion because it is a kind of landmine discussion.
There's landmines everywhere.
There are
Everywhere.
landmines everywhere, and
Yes.
how you it's how you say things, how you frame things, um, can be great, can help you, or they can harm you, or they can come back to harm you.
Absolutely.
And certainly, perspective is big here. Perspective is big. How the kinds of perspectives that we bring to the table and the perspectives that our listeners bring to the table.
Absolutely.
Um, and so it's good to be aware of that to the extent that we can be aware of that. I was just sitting in a kind of a meeting with a some school officials, and we were my wife and I were looking at the school and looking at sending our daughter to the school, and so as it is typical for any school, they will parade parents in front of you as testimonials, right? This is just good sales tactics.
Mhm.
This is just good sales.
Yep.
And there were lots of perceptions in the room. It was interesting when I heard the parents give their testimony about the school. I mean, obviously, they were saying all these great things about the school. It was very nice. But when I heard what I heard from them, what other parents I don't think did hear from them was I heard them say something like, "This is a busy school. Your child will be busy, and you parents will be busy too. So get used to it."
Wow.
And I don't think that's the message they were intending to send.
I'm pretty sure not, especially since busy doesn't actually mean productive, but that's a
Busy
whole.
doesn't mean exactly. Busy does not mean productive, nor does it mean virtuous. And in this context, I think they were trying to convey virtue. And so I knew better that that's not what they were trying to convey, but that's certainly how it initially hit me. And so we got to be careful as the speakers, listeners. You need to be careful as well how you interpret things.
Yes.
Um, Perception is huge in this discussion. You know, I think we've mentioned this before. Our race has never really come up. I've never talked about it with you.
No.
Not certainly never directly. It's never been an issue. Um,
Nope. This will be the
I
first time we've ever discussed it.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. So there's something really raw here, and so that's fun and exciting. Yeah, I mean, I grew up and this has never really been an issue. Interestingly, though, two things. Interestingly, when you begin to raise this topic, you got to be careful because what was once good can be soured.
Hmm. Good point.
And this topic tends to have that effect. It's almost like as soon as we enter into this sort of discussion and this dynamic,
Absolutely.
it almost has a tendency itself. Now, I don't think that'll happen between us. I think you're of the disposition that you're not easily offended or
No.
hurt or anything
No.
like that.
And I
So
love
I'm not worried
intellectual
about that.
conversations in which people disagree with me. I love that,
That's right.
from a point
That's
of
right.
learning, not from a point of aggressive comebacks, but from the point of making my argument stronger. College taught me that. You taught me that because you used to be my professor. So yeah. So
That's
yeah.
right. That's
Mhm.
right. That's right. I mean, I think there is something helpful about approaching things intellectually, at least at first.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful, bringing it to the intellectual table so you can try to make the best sense of things. Obviously, even if it is a really important and emotionally loaded topic, which it should be.
Right.
But I think having the intellectual conversation is helpful at times. The second thing I wanted to say was it's interesting, this discussion. There's a lot going on. There's a lot historically that's going on, and we won't get into all that today. There's too much. It's far too complicated. The dynamic and the rhetoric and the culture
Yeah.
and the perceptions,
Yeah. That's why I had to write
perceptions that are
three
involved.
volumes on the subject. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
yeah. It's big.
Exactly. It's interesting though, like I grew up in a military family, and and I went to a church that was predominantly African American.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You call it African American now? Is it, or is it black, or what do you call it now?
Black, I prefer black. Most people prefer black. It is so, and that's a great question because black is the culture. African American is something that was thrown upon us, right? So both are just fine. But when you say black, you're saying the culture. So it's more than just African American. It's like saying you say Hispanic, okay, but when you say Mexican, that's a different kind of Hispanic. So black is a
Right. It is.
different
Right.
kind of African American. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
different kind. Yeah, so
Yeah.
black is absolutely preferred
I
because
thought it was.
that's
Yeah, I
yeah,
thought it
yeah,
was.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, again, landmine discussion. I, it's like
Yeah,
calling,
yeah,
they call me
it's
the,
like, what do you say, right? Like, what's your pronouns?
well, yeah, yeah, that's another discussion. Yeah, well, it's like calling me a European American. I guess you could call me a
You
European.
could, I
I
guess,
just,
right? But it's
I mean,
not.
I predominantly have Scottish background, English, and a good bit of German.
Well,
So
that's pretty European.
that's pretty
You're
European.
checking a lot of
That's pretty
European
European.
boxes there.
That's right. That's pretty European. Yep.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So anyway, so yeah, but it is interesting. The second thing I was going to say was the historical climate that we're in, the cultural
Yeah,
climate that we're in. Um, now, it's had its heated moments. I mean, 2020 was a fascinating time, and we don't have to get into all those nuances. There's a lot going on there. Growing up, I grew up in a predominantly black church, and um, I, I mean, some people will say, kind of a priori, if you're white, you have a disposition toward this or that. And I just, that just was never a part of my culture growing up. I just didn't have that. So, I mean, people may tell me that now, but I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah.
And maybe I never will.
No, I don't think you will. And so my book, volume two, is written for people like you. We'll get to it for sure. It's all about half the book is about the white ally and how we should treat them or how we should react to them. Are we making their lives difficult, which we are? Does their own society make their life difficult, which it does, right? So there's a whole perspective of people like you who don't have this worldview, and that's another animal in itself. It's another animal in itself because how do you like, for instance, you're risking more in this interview than me because of the way the society works. You, if I do well, people are going to say, it's a smart young man. if you do well, not only is it expected, but you bear the weight of knowing better.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen to you is you're risking everything. You're risking this, you're doing that, and you then risk the opportunity, inflammatory statement here, but it's covered in book 2, of being treated like an African American if you don't do well. That's what society would do. And it comes from the slave codes, right? So it's unfair that someone like you just minding your business, trying to have an intellectual conversation, if it's not approved, then you
Mm-hmm.
get all this other stuff that comes with it because
Sure.
you know better. You shouldn't have been there in the first place. And it's an unfair battle for the Joshuas to have to face. You didn't ask for it, but you're gonna pay for it, but you didn't ask for it, right? And
That's right.
you have your own battle that's unfair. Anyway, keep going. I just wanted to
That's right.
highlight that it's
Yes.
unfair. Your position, while innocent, is also has you guilty from a black perspective and then guilty from a white perspective, just using
That's
these
right.
blanket terms,
That's
because
right.
you're going to get it from both sides
That's exactly right.
just for
Yeah,
existing.
I will
Yeah,
get it from both
yeah,
sides. Yes.
absolutely,
And
absolutely. And
I,
I won't,
yes,
because I'm already in it, so it's all good. Yeah, but you will.
I will. That's right. I I do have the tendency to have a conversation across the divides, and I'm willing to do so, and I have done so to some extent. I mean, just in a much smaller sort of to a much smaller degree. I've organized conferences and I've set up, and I always bring a wild card into the conference. And then when I do that, I always get flack for it. I always
Bullshit.
get resistance and pushback. And then from this particular group of people, or in this case, group of scholars, they'll say to me, "Why would you invite him? He's not one of us. He's not." And I said, well, I wanted to shake it up a bit, and I wanted you to think a little bit more.
Yes,
And they don't like that.
you accurately described the white ally problem. It's so accurate. It's so accurate. It's so accurate. Yeah, for sure. And it's why I spent a lot of time in book 2 bringing up the white ally, because it's part of the conversation. And I'm not sure if someone told me I'm the first to do it, but I don't even think like that. But it's part of the conversation. The American history, or and particularly the black oppression, or whatever we will call it, it would be called, absolutely involves the white ally,
Uh-huh.
to the point of getting thrashed and whipped. It's been part of the culture since the culture began.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, there's a complex set of issues here, yeah, going
yeah,
on. And of course we could get into the discussion about, why not just focus on culture? Maybe we are focusing on culture, focus on different types of cultures. I was raised in, I guess, a military culture and
yeah.
predominantly black church again, and so I didn't grow up with these perspectives. This wasn't an issue. And many times, frankly, I didn't want to talk about it. Ironically, it wasn't until later in growing up, um, circumstances around me
Right.
affected relationships that I had with people who I grew up with.
That's fair.
And it's unfortunate. A lot of it, I think, was mostly out of my hands. Now,
Of
we're
course.
talking about more personal or interpersonal relationships, people that I had friendships with, people that I grew up with
Right.
in the church. And so, circumstances historically around me, recent history, that affected our relationship. And it was unfortunate. But I mean, there are other issues like, I was a very much a lower middle class. I wouldn't even call, I mean, certainly not wealthy. And there are different classes. There are different cultures,
Right.
even cultures within, I don't know, what you call it, the white subcultures within the white culture
Yeah.
tend to be more uh, um, more of a melting pot, you might say, and then others are not. And then, yeah, so there's a lot going on here. I mean, there's a lot we could discuss, and maybe
Plenty.
we need to spend 10 episodes discussing a variety of issues. Your book is nearly 600 pages.
Yep.
It's a
Absolutely.
it's a big book.
Yeah.
It's a big boy, you
Yeah.
might say.
Yeah.
It's a
For
big
sure.
boy.
With footnotes everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, lots of footnotes. That's very
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's you got a bit more academic thing going on there. So
Yes.
and so hopefully a lot of people will read it. Yeah, I mean, I think well, it's already gotten a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So academic books tend not to, but sometimes you get lucky, depending on how you write it. But surprisingly, I mean, when I was reading through it, even though it's 600 pages,
Yeah.
it was, I mean, it went by, for me at least, fairly quickly, the read.
Sweet.
Um, it was readable and the concepts were laid out in a way that was very accessible.
Mhm.
And
That's
so
very intentional. Very intentional.
yeah. So the language was used. Yeah. So I want to highlight that. I thought that was very good. And I think overall, just general comment, and then I'll circle back around to
Sure.
this, is yeah, I mean, I think it's a contribution. So I've read Resegregation, Volume 1. And then I'm going to go back and work through parts of it, which hopefully maybe we'll have another conversation about if we, I mean, I don't know if we're going to spend an hour or 2 hours today. We could spend 10 hours. I'll be
We
tired
could
by
a
that
whole
point, but we
whole
could spend 10
semester.
hours easily.
Yeah.
And there's a lot we could talk about. Certainly, there's a lot. I just want to preface and point out there's a lot going on up front. There's a lot of statistics that are laid out, a lot of studies,
Yeah.
and there's a whole host of intermingling issues,
Yeah.
intermingling issues that are very complicated and should give and do give some texture
Yeah.
to this rich discussion. So I'm saying that speaking as as an intellectual to an
Yeah.
intellectual,
Yeah. That is
there's a
your
rich
reputation that you've
intellectual.
earned. Yes.
Yes, there's a rich intellectual discussion here. Not to denigrate, so don't hear me wrong, not to denigrate the emotional, the experiential kind of severity of and the density or the depth of the social dynamic.
Right.
Um, but there is a rich intellectual discussion here and one worth discussing and focusing on and exploring, and which maybe can bring insight into
Yeah,
the
sure.
the
And
conversation.
just as a parenthesis here, I actually intentionally, the author, the Black author, I removed intentionally most of, if not all, if not most of the emotion from it, because I wanted it to be palatable for many people. So I purposely did it. And I'm sure my Black counterparts are going to, so some of them won't like that as much, but that's not the point of this book. This book
Sure.
is to have an intellectual conversation about the facts. That's
Yeah.
the point of this book. So yeah, so just for people going to watch this later,
Yeah.
I removed the emotion behind it. You can't get mad at Dr. Farris. I removed it. So there you go.
Yeah. So don't blame that on me.
Yes, yes. Don't blame it on the white interviewer. Don't do that. I did it myself.
Ah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah. Funny. Okay. Well, it could. Yeah. Yeah, it's good you point that out. Yeah, well, so yeah, some other prefatory. So there's a lot of issues. So there's topics that we could discuss that are kind of background.
Yeah.
to the book. What do we mean by race? What do we mean by racism?
Yeah.
Of
What do we
course,
mean by
that's kind of
white?
playing. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
what do we mean by
What does that
white?
mean? That's a whole term that
Oh, yeah.
is
I mean,
used a
that's a
lot in the book.
massive
Yeah.
term,
Yeah.
social term.
Yeah.
What do we mean about the history of the US? What about Civil War and the pre-Civil War
Yep.
period? What do
Yep.
we mean by slavery?
Yeah.
And is slavery, is it primarily race-based? And how does the implications of that affect? Does it have a ripple effect on the societal and economic structures
Good
of
question.
of the U.S.? And so these are complicated and
Yes. Very hot.
hot
Yes.
topics.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hot
Very
topic.
hot. Yes. Neither one of us should be having this conversation hot.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So in the beginning of the book, you bring up a lot of the disparities, and you raise a lot of studies and things of that sort that's fascinating. Um, these are topics that I don't want to get into directly. I want to presume what you're saying when we move into the bigger picture
Okay.
contribution of this volume itself. Obviously, we could focus on kind of philosophical discussions of race, the multifaceted issues there. We could focus on racism. I'm not claiming to be an expert on racism, so I want to preface that.
That's fair.
I've studied it, and I've studied it years ago, and I have some ideas and conclusions about what race is, what racism is, and the complexities, the shades of gray, the social realities that are in the discussion.
Yeah.
Um, and I haven't returned to the discussion in a few years. In my introduction to theological anthropology, I have a chapter that covers race, and I give some, in a very kind of scholastic academic way, I give kind of different positions on what we mean by race and then how that impacts the racism discussion. Of course, there is a bigger discussion here that's kind of implicit
Yeah.
in wider economic discussions. Very simplistically, how we take people, how we understand people, like, are we primarily just individuals? Which a lot of people take that sort of view, especially in America. And I mean, I used to take that view. Um, of course, there's a broader set of issues related to that. There's another set of issues. Are we primarily communities or collectives that are somehow related in a real way?
Yeah.
Um, that's social or even somehow deeper than social dynamics.
Wow.
Um, and are we individuals that within kind of a constitutional republic, if we can call the U.S. still a constitutional
That was loaded. That
um,
was good too. That was
if we
good.
yeah, if we can. I mean, are the freedoms there for the individuals who are citizens to take up and act upon those freedoms and bring about the American dream, whatever the American dream was in the past, which I'm not sure that that's still a reality. But that's another set of
Yeah,
discussions
yeah. After
related to this.
1913, it couldn't be a reality. As soon as we instituted the Federal Reserve, that American dream shifted. Yeah, the
You're
Federal
right.
Reserve ruined that for sure.
I agree with you. I agree. I wasn't going to go there, but you did. But I
Yeah.
agree with you. I
Yeah,
agree. That's a bigger
sure.
discussion there. I
Yeah.
agree. I think that's right. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think you know, yeah, this individualism, collectivism discussion is an important one behind the scenes, and we could have that discussion. I wasn't planning to have it directly today, but I think it's important, and it's certainly in the book, and you signal to a lot of literature that points to um, certainly has kind of undermines or at least rebuffs or rebuts some of the individualists' kind of perspectives. I'm certainly not an individualist anymore.
But you did introduce me to Thomas. What's his name? Thomas
Oh
Sowell?
yeah, Thomas
Yeah,
Sowell.
yeah, yeah. So that's absolutely, yeah, for sure. We're gonna have to. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun because he starts off hard with the individual responsibility, and yeah. So some of the many of the things that I wouldn't say many. I would say 85 to 90% of what I put in the book as far as references, as footnotes and facts and proof, even though I argue opposing viewpoints the whole time, which is something I'm very proud of the book, is a strong indictment against the individual responsibility. A strong
Yeah, yeah,
indictment
yeah,
against it, yeah, but for sure, for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Now, at no point am I taking away the individual responsibility because that's what book 3 is about, which we'll get there. Book 3 is about, but there is, so I split the book up into 3 volumes. You said something very, very well that I've never heard before. Well, you said a few things I've never heard before. I love, especially the Constitutional Republican. That was so loaded. But you said something about perspective. And I never thought about that books are written from someone's perspective. We know they're written, all books are written with an agenda. Every book is an argument.
Mm-hmm.
The most unbiased argument is a biased argument. Like you
Yeah,
can't even make an
that's right.
argument without having some sort of bias, some sort of bias. I wrote this book. The reason why the emotions drawn out of it and the reason why it's so palatable is because I wrote it from the perspective of a former special operations intelligence sergeant. I
Mm.
wrote the book so I sat back and I said, okay, this is what the United States military taught me as an intelligence analyst about, be careful here, about war. There we go. Because I was going to say some stuff that might be still classified. That's about war.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you take down a country without firing a shot? Because
Uh, uh,
we bomb Hamas, we bomb the Gaza Strip, or allow ourselves to support that because we don't want that infrastructure. We don't want those buildings.
right.
But we don't bomb downtown London. We want those buildings. We want those.
Mm-hmm.
So in order for you to go to war with London, there are 7 things that you need to control that will allow you to kill the people without killing the people if you need to kill them, but keep the infrastructure in place so you can keep the wealth of London. And
Yes.
and that's what the book is written around. How do you do warfare without firing a shot? So the perspective of this book is a military strategist, and I was one heck of one. Takes this on race and goes, okay, what if I was black, in which I am, and what if I was in the military and I wanted to go to war
Uh,
with what we call racism? How would I do it? And that's the
mm-hmm.
perspective of this book. That's why it reads that way. And then I chose to write it in Chicago Turabian, which it's like 99% Chicago Turabian. If I was doing it with a doctoral thesis, I would have tightened some things up, but I didn't want to make it so academic people wouldn't read it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. If I do that, then the first thing I said to myself was, I need to write a book that takes this war, and I need to make sure white people love it before black people love it. That's how I wrote this book. Because psychologically, black people ain't gonna accept nothing anyway. Allow me that colloquialism, ain't gonna accept nothing anyway until white people say they can accept it. So when you talk about this book on race, I approached it from, hey, my white brothers and sisters, here's an argument we can have. And that's why it's kind and whatever, or whatever it may be. It's just an intellectual argument. Now, Whether stuff in there is true or not, that's debatable, right? That's why we're here, but you get the point.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. 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 I think that's the contribution that I really want to focus on and drill into a bit more,
Mhm.
certainly today. The big picture contribution that you offer in the book. I think that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's right. I mean, you're
Chapter 12 is the big picture, the power
yeah,
matrix. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, you're trying to write in a way that um rather than zeroing in on, you know, this or that
Right.
issue or this or that problem or this or that socioeconomic entitlement
Right.
or this or that issue, you're seeking to provide some kind of solution, a way
Absolutely.
forward.
And I figured if I could make the book a reference point, then we can have the conversation. If I So I decided that's why I think it's 1,025 total footnotes that I use. I quote every single person I use. I every paragraph is interacting with some sort of external source, and I do that because I'm trying to intellectually have this dialogue. And I figured if I can do that, and it took me a while so part one and part two is done. I'm still struggling with part three, which is come out December 21st. It's because I can't find the tone that I
Mm,
want for that book. It's so difficult because I'm talking the name of that book, I've been keeping it secret, but it's not secret anymore, is White People Started Slavery, Black People Keep It Going. And that's where all the individualism that Thomas Sowell was talking about is in there. But I can't find the right tone
mm, mm.
to intellectually tell my people
Yeah,
we got some very ignorant habits that we need to absolutely destroy today. Today. There's a grossly irresponsible behavior
yeah,
of black people, and I'm trying to find the tone that is going to do that while 22 million white people are looking in. Like, so it's so difficult to do so. That's why I'm struggling with that book, because I know that half my audience is white and most of the people who buy from me are white, right? And which I'm always pro black, so that's not a problem. But how do you find that tone? And that's very difficult for me to do on the third one. These other two, they're intellectual.
hmm
It's kind of hard to only be intellectual about something when you're also saying, "Come on, y'all, we got to do better. We got to do better." It's hard. It's hard. I can't step back from a bird's eye view and write it like I did the other two. It has to be some sort of, using theological terms. I can't be transcendent on this one. I have to be imminent. I've got to be in the canoe. I can't just be,
Yes,
yeah, I got to
I
be in
get
the
you. I
canoe.
know exactly
Exactly.
what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
can't be transcendent. Yes, or
Yeah.
academic
Yeah.
or abstract. You
Exactly.
can't live in your ivory tower in that one, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And
It's nice to stay in the ivory tower
it is
sometimes.
nice. It is nice, but it is causing
It is.
difficulty for sure.
Yeah, 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 it is. Yeah. So, okay, so you've said this already. Let's see, let's say
Mhm.
it again. What is the big picture of the book?
Yeah, fair enough. In layman's terms,
Resegregation.
yes, in layman's terms, resegregation is well, I gotta answer that twice. The book, all three volumes, and then the book of book one. So the main point of book one is to establish the power matrix. That here's how we got here financially. And it's not an individual responsibility. It can't be an individual responsibility because the economy doesn't operate on individual responsibility. In the short term, you can say, you know, so the way economy works is if Dr. Farris spends money, then it becomes income for Antonio Smith.
Mhm.
When I spend money, I then return and become income for someone else. And as long as this is working, income becomes spent, spent becomes income. That's an economy. And you look at that from the short term and a long term. And every 6 months, we have a whole well, that secret, a whole people to get together and say the interest rates should not be go up. Like this just happened like 2 days ago. The interest rates cannot go up again
Mm.
because of the behavior, not of the individual, but the collective individuals. So our entire economy worldwide has nothing to do with individual behavior. It has everything to do with a collective of individual behavior, which is now socio political, socioeconomics, whatever. But once it becomes collective, it's not individual behavior no more. And once you can see what's happening, then you can control that because anything you can account for, you can control. So, resegregation part one is about Black people need to establish that we need to operate healthy in an economy with all this stuff that's happened. So here's what's happening. Here's the whatever you want to call it, red line and depression, whatever. Here's the facts. Now, don't get mad at those facts. Resegregate. Now we're getting into the big picture of all three.
Mhm.
Segregation is to like, hey, it's just us. Resegregate. So I'm borrowing here from God's law to the Hebrews. Don't go to Tyre and Sidon. Don't do that. Don't eat the pigs. That's the people in England. Don't eat the shellfish. That's the people on the coast. Plant gardens.
Mm. Mhm.
Have children, right? Have children. Don't dwindle, and then pray for the nation you're in. For in its prosperity, you get prosperity. This is really the premise of resegregation that Black people need to come together. If you don't like Amazon, which I love Amazon, by the way, then
Uh-huh.
create your own. Get behind technology. Stop complaining about artificial intelligence and control artificial intelligence. Don't
Mhm.
complain about getting a job when you can hire people and get jobs. So on and so on and so on. I'll throw it back to you as it's your interview, but you get the point. This is the point of
Oh,
that.
yeah, this is good. Yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah. And so there is a fiscal responsibility that we have in any user-based economy. And if we understand what economy is, which I've explained, then you can look at that for a year and you can say, okay, here's the state of the economy. But you don't change interest rates for that. But if you look at 7 years of this, now this is a problem or it's a solution. And this is why the economy is always bear, boom, bear, boom. And it just go on. So when you put people in an economy and then you tell them individual effort is important,
Hmm.
it is, but tell that to the low middle class white person doing every single thing right, but can't break through $54,000 a year. Now that argument is ceased to exist. Now it's completely moot because the same argument is saying that Black people should individually do this. You grew up in a military family. There's a ceiling on the military family household for many different reasons. For one, your mother and your father had to travel every 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
You can't even get stability traveling every 2 or 3 years. According to the United States government, your father could make this much money, period. Then he had to do PT, state, all that stuff. But now he had to be deployed, whether it be deployed overseas or just regularly going to the field every 60 days for training. So now
Mhm.
you're growing up in a zip code that you're not choosing. You're choosing the best zip code based on how you're trying to go to work and stuff. And all of that is not the individual responsibility of a low middle class white person. So
Mhm.
how on earth is that not the same argument for, for black people as a whole? So anyway, I got 1,000 things to
Yeah. Yeah, right. No, yeah,
say.
we could come up with lots of other examples of that too.
Yeah,
I think that's right. There's a whole reality dynamic that we've entered into.
yeah.
I mean, even for those conservatives, and I would be a conservative,
I'm definitely conservative.
there's a kind of conservatism that highlights individual responsibility, individual action, individual property, um, and well, I believe in property, but um, there's a simplicity that I think is being more and more is being uh, confronted and challenged with the realities of economics at the moment.
Yeah, yeah,
As whatever you think of the social dynamics at the moment, there are challenges in various sectors of um, of the job force, the
yeah,
workforce, and there are different dynamics that
yeah.
no matter how hard you work, the older reality, whether to whatever extent it was true before, I'm not sure, but seems to be less and less true now.
Absolutely.
The older views about work really hard and you can achieve the American dream,
It's
well, that seems
poisonous.
to be slipping away.
Yeah, it's poisonous to
What
someone in
is
the
this
middle class.
American dream that
Yeah.
we're chasing after? And can we do it just by working really hard right now
No, they're
as
devaluating your
certain
dollar.
industries? Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
devaluating your dollar every chance they get.
right. That's right. So when my, one of my grandparents would say to me, the next generation really needs to learn the value of a dollar. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, perception here. I'm hearing something very different than
Yeah.
what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. Yes, I get it. I get it. I'm hearing something very different going back to perception. The value of the dollar isn't worth very much right now,
No,
is it?
no,
So
no.
you can work me to the bone. That
Yes.
dollar's not worth much,
No.
and I can't buy much with it anymore. I remember when I was in college and I would make $100 and I thought, wow, $100 is a lot of money.
It
I felt
was.
really, I felt really good about myself. I felt really good. I made $100.
Yeah.
I would live with all these other people in an apartment so we could afford to survive. And
Hmm.
I had, I can't remember. I remember one month. I don't even know how I survived. I remember one month I made $200 or something on top of whatever was the rent was covered. And somehow I managed to survive on that. I don't think I could anymore.
No, no, no. And you bring up a really good point because when your parents were growing, when your dad was in the military and doing his thing, mm, let's see, this is 2024 as this recording, assuming your father's in his 60s, 70s. So then $10.35, adjust for inflation, you can buy a house and raise a 2.5 person family of $10.35.
Wow.
You, that, that's just statistical facts. $10.35 was a great salary in 1982. Up until 1987, $10.35 will allow you to have a good, solid household and buy a middle class home. We can't do that today, Dr. Farris. Can you imagine
No,
making $10.35 an hour? Can you imagine that?
I could
That
imagine
that
it.
would be crazy. And that is the big problem. This is what I address in like chapters 1 and chapters 2 and chapter 3 immediately. That's the big problem of why this is not an individual issue. There is something from the Federal Reserve, which I'm so negative on the Federal Reserve, so don't mind me there. But something there, which we all know is grossly irresponsible. And what it does
Mhm.
is the truth is
Yeah.
slavery was too American slavery was too expensive. If you so let me back up and say three things. One, I'm definitely conservative. I'm not, and you can call me a conservative, but I'm not Republican and I'm not Democrat. But I'm absolutely conservative. You can hear it in my language. I'm conservative, which is going to lead me to these next three inflammatory things I'm going to say, just to show you how who wrote this book. I know where I'm going, and it's awful. If you were to ask me, should we vote? I'm going to tell you no. And let me tell you why. And I mean, who would let's define we? People, period. Forget black, white, Jew, Gentile. People. If you
Mm.
don't own property, I don't think you should vote. This is how conservative I am. If you don't own property, I don't think you should have weighted voting rights. I just don't. Because what do you do
I don't disagree.
with
That's controversial. Yeah,
that's
that's
very controversial. That's
very controversial.
inflammatory.
That's
It's
what,
very
I mean, that's a
controversial.
large reason why women didn't vote before, right? Because they couldn't own property and they didn't have the skin in the game, so to speak. They didn't have the because they didn't have property rights. They didn't have the arguably, this doesn't mean they weren't
Fair.
careful what you say here.
That's fair. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. No,
Careful what I say here, I'm about to
yeah,
say, but
yeah, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
they
Go ahead.
didn't necessarily have the access to certain information or awareness of certain information to this was the whole at least economic argument back in the day for why well they shouldn't vote.
It shouldn't vote. Plus, when you did vote, you would get two votes, right? Because the woman would automatically vote like her husband, right? Which is and it was
That's
crazy.
right.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm a huge egalitarian. So I'm trying to show y'all that I know in my own head I've got conflict of interest going on. So let's go back to this argument I just made. You poked a great hole in, and I'm glad you did. So let's redefine it. If you don't own property with your husband or through some sort of entity or through some sort of trust, something that almost levels the playing field, almost, because you can't ever level the playing field because equality is not natural. So in order to create equality, it must be intentionally done. The people in power must intentionally
Mhm.
create equality. Equality is not a natural thing of this universe. It's supposed to be created by people in power, which is what I'm getting to. So you shouldn't be voting if you don't have property or something. Fix any hole in my argument. There's plenty. I got plenty, and you just poke one. Because here's the point I'm trying to make. Because why? Because once you don't have anything, then what's the first thing you say? Well, take all Dr. Farris' money and divide it amongst us. Is what we say. This is
Mhm.
this is this is one that so now we're at the other problem of the argument now. And this what I was trying to get to, though my argument was poor, is in one case, it's take all the gold from the Republicans and give it to the world. This is what Democrats do. They know how to share other people's money very, very
Uh,
well.
uh,
Very well.
yeah.
On the other side, you got the Republicans going, well, no, I'm not doing that. I've worked hard for my money, and in which I am absolutely for you to do that.
Right.
The
Right.
Republicans keep money, make money. Democrats give it away. So neither one of these sides are working, and neither one can work. There has to be something different.
Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time. I pretty much, if you look at resegregation chapter 1, it's like writing. Uh, I'm going to say it's like writing the gospel, but I don't mean it to levitate it to the level of the gospel. I mean the method, the writing, the method, as in the gospel is the 1 week of passion suffering is the important part. Everything else was a long introduction. All right, this is what I'm trying to say. Chapter 12 was the important part. Everything else was a long introduction. All right, that's what I'm trying to.
Yes.
So however you communicate that
That's
without getting
good.
stones thrown at me, that's what I'm trying to communicate here. And that's how I wrote resegregation. Really, chapter 12 is the important part. Everything else is a long introduction of why we should be in chapter 12. That's what I was trying.
Gotcha.
Long answer to say that, but you get the point.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And you said it already, but what is chapter 12 about?
The power matrix.
Power
It's
matrix.
so the fundamental. So I didn't get to. I didn't say it earlier, but this is what I was taught in, careful here, in military intelligence. Some of these terms, some going to be very specific, and then I'm going to be broad. When I'm being broad, it is not because I don't know what to say. It is because I still have a top secret security clearance, and I am not trying to violate saying top secret and clarity security clearance. This is what I learned. Control economics. Then
Hmm.
you control finances. Then you
Hmm.
control data information. Then you control manufacturing. Then you control the infrastructure. And then you control the communications. And then you control the human resources. And once a military force starts to control the economy of a city, now you go right after the finance. Don't confuse economics with finance. Economics is more what I was explaining with the economy. Economics is what people are doing with money. Finance is money in itself. So what what the American people are doing with our money determines if we are in a recession.
Mm.
If we are not spending our money, that's a recession. If we're spending our money, that's a great economy. That's economics. Finances is we're punishing the banks for even holding money. So the reason
Hmm.
that high fees and stuff is because the interest rates are so low, the banks have to have overdraft fee this and 60 fee that and fees for having an account and all sorts of stuff. So economics and finance are two different things. And
Yeah.
if you look at what's happening between Israel and Hamas, respectively, you can see this happening right now. Someone's controlling the way people are spending money.
Hmm. Hmm.
Someone's now controlling the money. And how whoever's getting more money than the other side, that's finance. Someone's controlling. I'll let you all put your dots together. Someone's controlling the flow of information. Which trucks are here? With like they literally the whole point of special operations is to find the data and control that flow. Then somebody's making bullets, somebody's making vests, somebody's making so someone is controlling the manufacturing of where the food is coming from, where the water is going to. Then someone's controlling the infrastructure. Where can people live? Where can be this? Where can be that? Then, if you can't have a good war plan without controlling communications, for God's sake, so you got to spy on communication. You got to control which communications go in, and then of course you start controlling the human resources, the people in power, and that, my friend, is how you win a war, particularly in the Israel Hamas situation or the Russia Ukraine situation. We've decided, whoever we is, I'm not defining who we is there. We've decided we don't want those resources, but we want something. I'll leave what something may be out of it. It's a different podcast, but we want something. Okay. We want something. And when you put all that together, and when you think about race, when you think about why does a college professor make a college professor should at least be getting $500,000 a year,
Hmm.
at least, because
Hmm.
without a college professor, then you cannot even have a college. You just cannot. And if you put every college professor at $500,000 a year on a 3-year contract, it's still less with current endowments. It's still less than 1,000 of a percentage of labor. But our system is rigged in place to where we're going to keep doing what we're doing to keep controlling the wealth gap. And now, respectively, and I'll throw it back to you, now they don't care anymore. They is a loaded term here. I'm not going to define it. They don't care anymore who's in slavery because now we have debt slavery, which leads me back to one of the things I want to say earlier. American slavery was expensive. American slavery said, well, Dr. Farris, go on out there and get a slave up. We house them, and
Mhm.
then go on, send them to work. We feed them too.
Yeah.
Today's slavery says, Dr. Farris, get your butt up and you go to work in a house you pay for, and you feed yourself, but we're going to keep you in slavery in perpetuity.
Uh,
We're going to keep the interest rates where they are, so where and then this is I'm really going to get in trouble for saying this, but I want to do it on purpose. They have us in so much slavery that those of you who believe in Jesus, or if you believe in the Bible or the Torah, if you believe in the Quran, then you're all believing in some sort of age to come that ushers in peace. All three of you people groups are believing in that. How you interpret it, that's up to you. But y'all can't even go. If in the Quran, it's the Messiah, Jesus is the Messiah who ushers in 1,000 years of peace. He gets mortally wounded, and then that 1,000 years of peace come. And in the Bible, that happens. In the Torah, it's a different story. Dispensationalism is pretty good at being pretty close to that. But even though I don't really side with dispensationalism, but pretty good at being close to that. And none of you people, when Jesus comes or when the extra dispensation comes, can actually participate in the second coming because you can't get off work. You
uh.
can't leave your job. Right? But you literally you can't. This is how much of slavery we're in, to where you can't even ask your boss to get off, leave your job, get on a flight to go to Mecca. You can't even do it. And
No, can't do it. Most people can't do it.
exactly. We
They
we we
they
serve
think that's
religions.
normal. That's
Exactly.
normal. And they're
Exactly.
comfortable with it, right? And they're
Exactly.
bored at the same time.
Bored at the same time. We're so much in perpetuity. We're so much in debt slavery, to where the religions that we're looking forward to the second coming, we can't even afford to participate. Think about it. To where Jesus in the New Testament has to say, "Let the dead bury the dead." Come on, take up your like, think about it.
Yeah.
We couldn't even do that today because of the things I'm dealing with in resegregation. That's a
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
crazy
Right.
statement is pretty accurate.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Well, I mean, gosh, we're tempted by it though, aren't we? And
Yeah,
this is the life most of us have chosen,
yeah,
and
yeah.
we live for it. We think it's normal, and we
Sit.
don't, but then we don't know how to get out of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
We don't know how to get out of it. We're
Exactly.
not really free, are we?
No,
We've
no.
created a slave, interesting, a
Yeah.
data system. So what about the middle class?
The middle class has it worse. And I addressed that in the book. The middle class, first off, I don't pay taxes the way y'all pay taxes. I'm absolutely Republican when it comes to paying taxes. Thank God for Republicans is what I would tell you.
And why would you?
Yeah, I know exactly. I have no problem paying my fair share, but expect me. I don't even make an income. I don't make an income. I I do the equivalent of owning stocks, to where I got stocks. I'll ask the bank for a loan to loan against my stocks and have the appreciate, right. That whole thing there. Except I don't have stocks. I have a company that continuously, or the economy that continuously feeds me without
Hmm.
generating the income. Without generating the income. So my stuff is a little bit different. But the middle class has it bad because you had a bad for three reasons, and I'll try to be as intellectual about this as possible. We'll borrow from Robert Kiyosaki on one of them. Reason number one is the between inflation and the devaluation of the dollar that's happening every single second.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can Google
Yeah.
right now. If you Google the national deficit or worldwide deficit, you can every second you're going to see the money go up and down, up and down, up and down, and
Hmm.
it's because you can't have a dollar on planet Earth without having a dollar of debt on planet Earth. They're attached. So the government goes to a private organization, the Federal Reserve, and says, the Federal Reserve, give me money. The Federal Reserve says, Y'all good for it. You always pay us back. How does the government pay back the Federal Reserve? Dr. Farris. It's not poor people. Poor people can't get along. It's not wealthy people because wealthy people have good debt. It's the middle class. So when the government borrows money from the Federal Reserve, the middle class is then expected to pay back the government's money. And then we have this thing called fractional reserve, fractional payments to where every dollar I can borrow $10 from that. So
Yeah.
this is why you get those happy commercials. Hello, Dr. Ferris. Are you happy about Cancun this year? Right. You get the little warm voice with the voiceover person because they're trying to get you to spend money. And when Bank of America convinces you to own where you live while Bank of America rents where they work. It's insane. But middle class has the
Wow.
worst. And the middle class is the most lied. Baby boomers is the most lied to generation to
Hmm.
ever have existed. The so if you're a baby boomer middle class,
Yeah.
you just retired and you recognize that that's not the retirement you were promised. That
Hmm.
3,000 a month, that 4,000 a month does not do it because it would have did it in the 80s when you were saying I'm going to retire 3,000, but the devaluation of the dollar, it's now 3,000. When you joked about getting the $200 extra, $200 extra, we used
Yeah.
to be able to say in the 90s, most companies won't file, not company, most people won't file bankruptcy if they had an extra $200. You can't even say that no more. Extra $200.
What's that? Yeah.
It's the Netflix subscription. Like if you add up all your paid subscription that you're keeping your children happy with, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
$200.
Yeah.
The Disney Plus and the Netflix and the Hulu and the V Bucks and the Roblox and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's
That's right.
crazy, man. That's crazy. Great question. Great question. I'm having
Uh-huh.
fun.
Hey, that's good. That's good. Yeah. Um, Middle class. Well, the middle class may be um going out of existence then, based
I
on
think so. I don't I think so. I know it started with the bourgeois class or however you say it, when people like Christopher Columbus was making more money than the king. I get that. That's not the case anymore. I don't know what's I've okay, here's how I see it. Now, everybody please poke holes in this, but here's how I see it. I don't think there's a middle class anymore. I think the middle class is dead already.
Hmm.
I think the upper class has become the global class.
Okay.
So what we used to call upper class, that's shifted.
Yeah.
So let's define global class. This is Jeff Bezos' money works anywhere and wherever he is, he's in the top 1%. And you don't have to just
Yeah.
get Jeff Bezos. You can get a dude that makes if you make $982,000, no matter where you live on this planet, you're in the top 1% with the exception of like Sweden and maybe one other place, just with the exception of
Mhm.
those two places.
Yeah.
So now you're in the top 1%. That's a global class now. So when you talk about middle class, millionaire basically is the new middle class. If you're not a millionaire, then you're not even the middle class. This is why we have 1,730 millionaires being born a minute or an hour or whatever it is, because
Hmm. Hmm.
because we can't keep up with the devaluation of the dollar and
Yeah.
the increasing of revenues, but the decreasing or the stagnation of salaries. It's just
Yeah.
a
Wow.
formula that's going
Wow.
to continuously wreak havoc, and and we deserve whatever happens. 200 years from now, they will be talking about us in class, his historians, and they're going to say, "Why these people didn't make any changes like the same way we do?" You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Huh. Yeah. Okay. So that may be. So let's talk about Claudia Anderson for a moment.
Yes, the book's dedicated
because
to him.
you have been influenced by Claude Anderson a good bit, I
Yes,
think, in his thinking, and you bring him up quite often in your book. So
yes, yes.
I'm grateful that you've made me more aware of Claude
Yeah,
Anderson and his works.
yeah.
Can you
He's a
tell me about Claude Anderson, why he's so important, and how he factors into your book?
yeah. He's consulted with a few sitting presidents. I know he did Obama and he did Bush for sure. he so Dr. Claude Anderson is a champion of Black people. There's no doubt about it. He writes a few books. Powernomics is in Powernomics. He basically builds a 5-story building. I start on the 6th floor. The resegregation starts on the 6th floor of that building, and I build 7 more floors after that. What he does, he owns his own garden, supermarket, and stuff. So he's learned how to be self-sufficient through group economics, and he goes around the country teaching the Black community how to come together, shop at a supermarket, and when you get your delis, it just happens to be in the backyard of that supermarket. This self-autonomous ecosystem. And the best way I can explain Dr. Claude Anderson is I got to bring up Matt Damon in the movie Martian. It's like the greatest
Okay.
way to explain. It's a great movie, right? Did you see it?
Yeah.
Ah, I loved it. The mere fact that my man survived with a potato is amazing. And that's kind of what Dr. Claude Anderson teaches. In a harsh environment, do you have the ability to grow your own potatoes? That's
Ah,
Dr. Claude Anderson's
oh,
message.
that's very good.
Yeah,
In that
that's his message.
environment, do you have the ability to grow potatoes?
That's his message. That's it. Summed up, simplified. That's his message. Black people, do you have the ability to grow tomatoes? Not to go on Walmart because you don't control Walmart.
Yeah.
You don't own the streets. You don't own the economy. You don't own Walmart. You don't nothing about that is a habitable environment for Black people as a whole. But
Hmm.
but your backyard, if
Hmm.
everything goes down,
Yeah,
can you be self-sufficient and grow a potato? It's a powerful message. I don't think
that's
anybody's ever
good.
explained Dr. Quanis that way, but my brain works
Yeah,
like that.
that's a good analogy. That's a good analogy. If you don't have the ability to grow your own food,
Yeah.
um, I guess the idea is if you don't have the ability to grow your own food, then what follows from that?
It's great. So he covers that. So that's great. So he'll say, grow your own food. How? By getting the resources. Now, that's a different story. I'll skip that for right now. So how you make money from this food, then create an economy, create a community that wants those potatoes. Now you create an economy. That's his first floor. Once you create that economy, then the next thing you have to do logically is you start policing that. I mean, not policing, you start creating laws around that economy. That's the next floor. That's when you start renting politicians, which we call lobbying today. Renting politicians sounds so terrible. This the proper word for it is lobbying, right? Then after you do that, if you can't lobby for a politician, don't run for politics because that's not control. Have the money to be able to influence the laws. After that, then you start policing that. You hire your own police force. And then after that, you focus on media, and then you control your own narratives, you control your own media. Then after that, you put your own school systems in place and you reteach those first 4 floors. And that's the full extent now of Dr. Claude Anderson. It's brilliant. If you have an inside view
Hmm.
of my company, so you can I do every last one of those
Oh yeah,
floors, every last one.
that's
Yep.
right. That's
Mm-hmm.
right. Yeah. Interesting. So that's Dr. Claude Anderson, and he goes
Brilliant.
up to 6 floors. But
He goes
those are
up to
the
5 floors.
five floors.
I started on level 6 because
Level-
I reestablished what economy means. It's a little different now than what he did because because I mean, he wrote his book in like 92. Economy
Yeah.
means something completely different in 2022, completely different. So I shift economy to a technological standpoint to whether we own banks or anything, right? It controls click funnels to actual software, create our
Yeah.
own software as a services. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Things like that. And then
Yeah.
all those every floor, everything I told you about the human resources, the manufacturing, each one of those are floors. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The economics, the finances, the data information, the manufacturing, the infrastructure, the communications, and the human resources. That's floors 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Which is why I
Wow.
made chapter 12. It was symbolic. 12 floors. Chapter 12 is the power matrix. It was symbolic.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. That helps our, I'm sure that's helpful for our listeners. Yeah, we could probably come back to this economic question because there's a lot there to chew on. I'm interested in that discussion, certainly in this context as well as other contexts. I mean, there's a lot going on right now with as the economy is changing in quite uh, quite profound ways that you've
Right.
already suggested. Uh, for the middle class, or what is perceived as being the middle class, we are experiencing greater hardship, and as costs of goods are going up, and so there's a strong tendency in many of the circles that I've run in toward what they call a kind of localism. And so creating your own local economies. And I think that's a great idea. I think we
It's
should do that.
absolutely. I agree
Um,
with it 100%.
and I mean, that raises other challenges, of course. Claude Anderson is suggesting we need to do more than that, as you are. Local economies are great, and we should support our local businesses that are directly contributing to our smaller community.
Right.
We should. I've certainly practiced this. We, to the extent that we're able to, try to create our own food as much as possible. There's challenges with that. Um, I want my own chickens. This is a big
Right.
local thing right now, right?
Right.
This big
Right.
local thing. And um, you know, many years ago, um, conservatives who were not localists would make fun of the localists for having their own chickens. But then the eggs started going really high in price, and now it's kind of like, it's kind of funny. You wish
Yep.
you had your own chickens to your own chicken.
Yep. That's how it
Um,
works too. That's how
yeah,
it works. That's
that's
how it
right.
works.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot there that we could chew on. I'd like to talk about that again at maybe in another context.
Oh
I
yeah,
think there's
sure.
a lot there to chat about. So you do talk a lot about virtue in the book. You do raise the concept of virtue a good bit. I want to circle around this a little bit, and
Sure.
maybe we can bring this to a maybe a conclusion shortly. We could
Sure.
probably go for a couple more hours, um, but we'll see we'll see where it takes us. You talk a lot about virtues. What is the role of virtue in wealth development?
So
And
I
what do you
took
mean by them, by
yeah,
virtue?
I took the Aristotelian view here, being so I kind of went just kicked Plato in the face and was like, hey, let's go over here. Virtue, the way I'm defining it and using it is it's going to be hard to start this, but if we practice it and keep doing it, at some point it'll become a little bit easier, then it will become a habit. And then once we keep reinforcing this habit, then it just simply becomes a virtue of who we are, of
Yeah,
what we do, which makes sense because you don't have to tell Koreans to buy from Koreans. They only buy from Koreans. You
right.
just, you, you, you will be, if you ever see a Korean at 8 o'clock in the morning at IHOP. Take a picture. Take a picture. That picture's going to be worth something immediately. It's going to have high value.
I've never
Because,
seen a Korean at my. Did you say IHOP or Waffle House?
either one. I said IHOP, but yeah, either one because
I was thinking Waffle House. Yeah, I've never
yeah,
seen one there either.
no, and we talking about and I'm using Korean here as they still speak the Korean language in their homes, right? And all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not, not just Korean descent, but in their homes
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
shopping with their own people.
That's right.
That's what they're doing. And I'm applauding that. I'm not saying that, and I know my counterparts would say this was wrong. I'm saying, I'm like Jesus in this, I keep making these terrible comparisons. In the pericope of the shrewd manager, I mean, okay. I wish Israel would act like this shrewd manager. I wish my people would act like Koreans. Okay.
Uh-huh.
That's the analogy I'm trying to go here. I applaud white people for having two checks. White people essentially have two checks. You have your check and you got my check. Because what do? It's 8 o'clock in the morning. First thing a black person does is get up, drive past our community and go into yours and spend money. That's the first thing we do.
Ah,
That's the first thing we drive past our entire community, and we can't wait to get into yours to spend our money. So of course you're ahead because you got your check and my check. And I'm spending 98% of my check in your community. These are the things that we need to absolutely stop.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
when we do that, that's when it becomes a virtue because it would just be natural as Polish people buying from Polish people. There's no, they're not having, there's no resegregation, the Polish version. There's no need to write that book.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
There's
Yeah.
no need to write the Korean or the Jewish resegregation. Jews buy from
Uh-huh.
Jews. There's no need to do
Right.
that. Yeah, there's no need to do
That's
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's actually that yeah, that's actually quite
Mm. That's what I'm calling
quite
virtue.
good. I think that's good. That is virtuous. I mean, um, there's something that's intuitive about that there's something virtuous about, I mean, at one level, in the scriptures, you have these principles that are seem to be at play here that are really at one level, well, they are social, they're economic principles. And that is that when it comes to your family in the Old Testament,
Mm.
there are certain regulations that are in place
Yeah,
that you have to provide for your family or
absolutely.
take care of your family first, and this whole principle is present there,
Yeah,
but then it gets picked up in the New Testament
yeah,
again. This sort of you have these sort of spheres of responsibility
yeah.
that don't mutually exclude one another, but there is a kind of priority given to certain spheres. So if you don't take care of your own home first, then, well, you can't go out and take care of somebody else's home,
That's
right?
right. That right.
And you
Yeah,
got to take care of your own home first, right?
yeah.
So that you can be I mean, simply so you can, I mean, it seems quite obvious, so you can be a help to others. I mean, this is
Right.
why on the airplane, it's not, I mean, well, maybe it is selfish at one level, but it's natural in the sense that it's good.
Right.
When a parent has to take care of themselves first by putting the mask on, if they
Yeah,
can't breathe in the flight, they have to do that first so that they can take care of their child.
exactly.
And if they don't do that, then they're not going to be any good for their child.
Everybody dies.
Everybody dies. They're both going to die, right? You have to, yeah. I mean, that's a very simplistic analogy, but I think it's true in
It's
economy,
true.
right?
Absolutely.
You're not taking care of your own, you're not investing in your own,
That's right.
taking care of that, protecting it, investing in it, nurturing it,
Right.
loving it, right? You're not
Absolutely.
going to build, I mean, it's going to die, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to die.
It's gonna
It's,
die. And
I
that's
mean,
what's happening.
this is at one level, well, I think this is just right. I mean, and if that's what's happening in the Black communities,
That's
I mean, I
exactly.
think it is
Yeah,
happening.
exactly.
I
Yeah, for
think
sure.
it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, well, I mean, certainly in lots of Black communities. I lived in Southern Illinois, right across the uh, the um, the river from St. Louis, Missouri. So I was right
Yeah.
next to a place called East St. Louis. Have you heard of East St. Louis?
Well, it's pretty melanated up in the East St. Louis. It got some folk that look like me there. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You
yeah.
was in, yeah, yeah. You was close to the hood. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I guess you'd call it, the hood. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was right next door to it anyway. I lived
Yeah.
right next door, and it was unfortunate because I would see like the people that would live there, they would go out of East St. Louis to work and to spend money. They would go into maybe downtown St. Louis. Now, downtown St. Louis isn't doing that well either right now.
Right.
It hasn't been doing well for a
Yeah.
while. But anyway, that's a larger, set of issues. Culturally, things going on there, economics, bad
Right.
financial decisions. There's all sorts of things going on there. But I mean, it's still better than the quality of like what we see in East St.
Sure.
Louis.
Sure.
So people would go out and work outside of East St. Louis. It seems a lot of them who were doing well, and they would spend money there. It seems they wouldn't spend money in East St. Louis. East St. Louis was, I mean, I drove through it in the daytime.
Mhm.
Actually, I ended up there one night at 2 a.m. That's not good. I didn't mean to be there. I shouldn't have been there.
No, you probably should not have. Easy pickings.
Easy, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could see me. Uh,
Yes, absolutely.
could see me coming down the street. Whoop, sorry
Yeah.
about that. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, I just resonate with your point that, but there was no nurturing, no love to the
Mm-mm.
community there, and it was destroyed. And
Absolutely.
I would drive down blocks and blocks of East St. Louis, and it was just utterly destroyed. Nobody cared, it seemed. I mean, just you look at it, it's like nobody cares about this place, do they?
No,
And
no.
their own people, it's not clear if they care about it.
And then you'll get someone like me that would then come in, see it's get destroyed, and I'll start buying all the property. And I would let it sit there and get even worse. I'd even probably hire someone to go in and vandalize it and let it get worse. So now when the city sees, and this is one of those top secret things, when the city sees it destroyed, since I own most of the property, I forget the designation they give it to it. I'll look it up here in a second, but they'll something the property, something to where it says this whole area now needs to be shut down. We're going to tear all these buildings down. This will be what they call gentrification, but gentrification is started from somewhere. I bought all these properties, but now the city buys them back from me at even more than what I paid because I dropped the property value so detrimentally to now the city is paying me 50, 60, 70% to get the properties back just to destroy them and build them in. And that's a real deal
Oh,
genius
wow.
real estate employee. It's a real estate play. It's genius. But how do you pull that play? You don't do that in River Oaks. You don't do that in Rancho Cucamonga. You do it in East St. Louis.
Hmm.
You'll never buy a property in the you must in order to do that, which happens every day, is happening right now. In order to do that, you have to do it with a people who don't vote, who won't vote, right? And all these other things that come with that and won't make up a big fuss. When you do construction, what's the number? 50% of construction costs is waste. So when
Hmm.
a city is doing construction, that waste got to go somewhere. but you're not going to put the, you know how you've seen it. We've all driven past it, the big old mountain of rocks, the dark ones and the red ones and the white ones, and you got all this stuff. That's got to go somewhere, but it's
Right.
not going to go in the affluent neighborhoods. So you look
Right.
at the map, you look at district in most cities, district A means where poor black people are, right? Or low income is what district A. It's like reserve. I'm not sure it's like some secret that's not even a secret. So you look at it and you say, okay, we're gonna take and say, Dr. Farris, take out trucks and go this way, and you're gonna dump it right here. And of course, it's not gonna be in Jewish town, Korean town. It's going to be where my people are because we're not going to vote. We're not going to complain. And even if we are, we don't have the money to win.
Mm.
We don't even have. So even if I did complain, now there's always going to be one person trying to get us to vote for Proposition B, but they're knocking on doors trying to. But it's not going to happen because we simply don't. This is but book three is going to have to investigate. We simply don't care enough or
Hmm.
educated enough, or something enough or
Yeah.
we simply don't have enough money enough
Yeah.
to tackle these issues, hire the lawyers, stop the thing, you know. And lastly, then you can put one of us in court. If you force me to go to court, two things are going to happen. One, you can just tie me up in litigation enough to run out of money. Two, I can't afford to go to court. I got to go to this job. And if I lose this job, then I can't provide for my family. So now, fine, you can have the court case because I can't afford to lose this job. And that's this. This is just perpetual existence. That's completely, yeah. It's just the reality we live in, man. It really is. I can do this all day, man. I
Mm.
got all this stuff in my head, rattled off. Let me look while you talking. I'm gonna look up that real estate. The city classifies it as something, and I need to figure out what it is. I forget the name of it, and I
Uh-huh.
had it in
Uh-huh.
my head for you, but I got it though. I'll remember here in a second.
All right. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
I'll text it to you if we run out of time. I'll text it to you if I got to.
oh,
But yeah,
sure.
yeah,
No,
but I'll
that's
make sure you
good.
get
That's
it. Yeah.
good. So yeah, so virtue, you see virtue as related to economics.
That's a good question. I think so. I want to say no because my ego wants me to, but I know I'll be lying. Like I
Hmm.
know it. Like I want to, and I know hundreds of thousands of people going to see this, and I want so bad to say no. I don't see that. No, but I'm lying. I see everything as an economical problem, and two things there. If I step outside of myself and I ask myself, why do I see everything as an economical problem? The most obvious answer is as a black man coming from extreme poverty, everything's an economical problem. So I've had to learn how
Mm.
to
Mm.
be economically savvy.
Yeah.
And that has put goggles on everything that I see.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's the
Yep.
lens it's painted through. That's not fair, but and I should be more objective and more unbiased. But then I still got to use my own logic and reasoning. You can't I can't separate Jesus from the time in which he was born. He talked about
Uh-huh.
plants and mustard seeds. He didn't talk about Wi-Fi and Bluetooth.
Yeah.
He goes like the era in which he was born painted the goggles of his theology. So I
Yeah.
can't, yeah, I can't. So I can't say he's wrong for saying I know a farmer. He sowed some seeds. He was talking to farmers who dealt with seeds. So in one perspective, I know I'm wrong by saying everything as an economical problem. But then I also recognize, but I can't stop the post-modernity poverty in which I've come. I can't do that either. So yeah, I think that is a state in which I should be more careful there. But then again,
No, I think you're
yeah,
right. I think that's interesting. I mean, yeah, there's certainly a perception that everything is economical. if you're living in po absolute utter poverty,
Yeah.
then that's all you do, that's all you see. The At another level, I mean, virtue is it does well, it seems to me, and it
Yeah.
seems to have come out in your book that virtue is always related to economics. There's some of the things that you were talking about,
Yeah.
well, why should your community another set of questions is, why hasn't the melting pot experiment taken?
Yeah.
That's a different set of questions. Why
It
hasn't the
is.
melting pot in America taken? Because that was an experiment that was being done, and we're still a young nation, but I'm not sure what happened. But I mean, the idea, at least, there is an idea of being a melting pot and creating a nation that is a kind of a melting pot, it seems
Sure.
to me.
Sure.
Where these cultures are blending, but you don't have that. You still have this sort of these strong distinctions that represent certain communities. I mean,
Yeah.
what I mean this happens not just with black and white. It happens with Koreans and whites
Sure.
very commonly, and Jewish and whites and Japanese and
Sure.
whites or Germans that even move over here. They still have their German communities that they pour into. It
Sure.
is interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because I had when I was in Bible college, I had a couple of friends. I was never fully in, but they were a couple of what were they? Chinese Chinese friends, and they would bring me around in their house and their community because there was a larger community, a Chinese community there,
Mhm.
and they lived together, they ate together, worked together, they spent
Of course they did.
time together, they paid into their community together. They go to their various restaurants and their grocery stores, and they paid into that, and that's where they got their goods.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a stark difference between what their communities look like and some of, well, what
Yeah.
we were talking about, the
No,
Black
for sure.
community. And arguably you might say that there's something virtuous about that.
Yeah.
There would be something virtuous about the experiment if it took place of really becoming a melting pot and integrating the cultures. Um, and unfortunately, that uh, I, I don't know how well that's worked out.
Uh,
Um,
It's a doozy. It's a doozy because I
yeah,
don't even have that answer.
but I do think there is something to this that comes up in your book quite a bit, this virtue and virtue being related to economy. And certainly there's individual virtues as well as communal virtues that are part and parcel of the solution that you're trying to offer. It
Yeah.
reminded me of an important book that I haven't read in many, many years that I want to go back to and read again,
Yeah.
by Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry, you may have heard of him. He's a farmer. He was a poet and he's a famous poet,
Wow.
social commentator who had some sort of fellowship at Harvard, I think.
Oh.
Anyway, he's well known. He didn't stay in academia. He wanted to go live off, have his own farm. He's a farmer, and so he writes
Right.
independently as he farms. He writes social commentary and poetry, and he's famous. But he wrote this
Wow.
book that influenced me quite a bit, called Sex, Economy, Freedom, and Community. And he tries to show in his essays, they're kind of more, academic essays, but they're essays where he shows the interdependence of these various factors and
Wow.
how they play into one another, how they feed into one another. So ultimately, virtue is at the end or the goal, but virtue drives these things and blends them or brings them together:
That's fair.
sex economy and freedom. And I don't remember all the details. I think
Mhm.
he's more libertarian in his mindset. I'm not libertarian, but but I love the book, and he was really pushing this kind of virtue of localism that we've been
Mm.
talking about, and the importance of caring for your own. And part of what that means, he talks about, is caring for your own community, um, which he understands is locally understood interdependence of a local people,
Wow.
culture, economy, and nature that are bound by trust and
Wow.
affection. When you destroy the trust and affection between those people, well, that has larger ramifications for other communities that are outside of that
Absolutely.
community, our
Absolutely.
society and our nation or our
Absolutely.
republic, if it's a republic, but that's
That's absolutely what happened to my people. For sure. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so these aspects of both private and public life, especially at the local level, are interdependent. They are related. And so you can't really sharply separate out these issues. These communities are made up of people that are interdependent and interrelated on one another.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, so that just it seems to that sort of biblical principle of really caring for your own at the smaller level of the family.
Right.
Um, uh, this is why I mean, so many of the conservatives uh, throughout the years have really highlighted this fact and or this aspect. Now,
Sure.
this will get a little more controversial, but it's related to all that we've been saying, and we could
Right.
tease this out and criticize it and show where it maybe goes too far. Some people would say it goes too far, and that is the focus on the family,
Right.
the fundamental social unit of society that has sort of layers. It's the sort of smallest sphere of which scriptures talk about, but every other sphere is interdependent upon the
Yeah.
first
That's good.
sphere, the, the
Yeah.
the family itself, and everything sort of has a kind of ripple effect out of that.
Sure
You
does.
destroy the foundations of the family. It's uh, arguably, at least this is the logic, and I think this is the logic of the scriptures. Um, that it's going to have a ripple effect on the other spheres
Right.
of which virtue is related. Sex, economy, freedom,
Yeah.
and these things are related. Um, if you want a flourishing society, you have to care for your own, right?
Mm.
This is part and parcel of virtue. I mean, as a black community, like the black community
Right.
has to take care of their own. They just
Has to.
have to.
Has to.
And at one level, I mean, it's assuming it's primarily a monoculture, right? Which our cultures are still somehow divided, quite divided.
Yeah.
Um, you have to care for that for your own monoculture. You have to care for that, and that begins with the family. It seems that's the argument. That's the logic.
It makes
And
total sense.
yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that these cultures or races, if you want to call them races, are divided in the US to such an extent. I live here in Birmingham, and I have lots of black friends. I have lots of pastor friends
Yeah.
who are black, and but uh we will meet up and we will chat and have a great time, and or we'll meet up at the local shop and chat and work, and but then other aspects of our lives are quite bifurcated.
Right. Of
So
course.
um I mean right now, and interestingly, it's unfortunate. um it seems like it wouldn't be this way, and it seems like it maybe in years past, it depends, it wasn't this way to this extent, but the churches here are pretty divided, and so it's a rarity for someone like me to be invited to
Oh
those
yeah.
churches.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And even though I might be really good friends with the pastors outside of the church context,
You're saying something now. That's a landmine. Landmines are
it's
present,
a
Dr.
landmine.
Farris.
That's a landmine.
You're telling the truth, though. You're telling the truth. You're telling the truth. You are absolutely telling the truth. You'd be friends with these pastors and never preach at the church, right? And nothing, any of that,
That's
right?
right.
There's a lot of landmines there, man. Especially,
Uh-huh.
yeah, because considering that religion is let's adopt for illustration that the matrix would be a real thing. And let's say that this matrix would be a system of control. So for this illustration, there's a
Yes.
system of control and it exists in the government at its highest point,
Hmm.
all religions at its highest point, and all school systems at its highest point. So when
Hmm.
you're talking about, at its pinnacle, so when you're
Yeah.
talking about what you're talking about the system of control. So assuming there's a such thing as an oligarchy, or any system of control anywhere, you're punching at it right now. For sure. And they hear you. They
That's
hear
right.
you. For
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. No, you
That's
make a
right.
good point. You make a good point. You make a good point. Religion is, I've shucks. I've I have discovered that religion and black religion is very, very different. I'm just discovering this, okay? Because
Hmm. Hmm.
black church is the only church that I understand. And even though, well, now I mean I'm talking to all sorts of white churches, but we got two different Jesuses. Like they're not the same Jesus. They're not. They're not.
Uh,
Somebody needs to write a book about
yeah.
the
Actually, you
God of the
should write
Black
that book.
Church. Yeah, the God of the
I
Black
I
Church, the
hope
God
they
of the
have the
White
same
Church.
Jesus, but that's another question, right? That's another
Yeah, right.
discussion,
That's
isn't it?
another question.
I
I'm
hope
sure.
they have the same Jesus.
Yeah, I hope the sacred text has the same Jesus.
That's right. That's right. I hope it does.
But
Yes.
flowing from that pulpit
He's the
in the
Savior.
Bible
Yes.
study, yeah,
Yes.
flowing from that pulpit in the Bible studies, we got two different gods, man. We really do. We really, really do. And I'm just discovering this. But and how am I discovering it? Because I mentor so many people. And through feedback, I'm recognizing. So sometimes I use a church example, and
Yeah.
then the white counterparts be like, "That's not what we think at our church." I'm like, "What the hell you mean? This is exactly what we think." Oh no, it's not. It's not. It's like, oh, and I'm recognizing that there is a black God, air quotes around this whole thing, and a white God, and the two ideologies are different. They're very different. They're very, very different, which makes sense because if you want to control the people,
Uh,
then without a doubt, give us a poor God, right? give us a poor God. It's amazing how when I pray, I'm praying for God to meet my needs, but those needs are $23.46. It's all I need, God, please. But then when Jeff Bezos prays, it's 23 billion in an hour, God, if you don't mind, and that's
hmm.
a big sliding scale of faith and belief
Yeah.
that, yeah, there's a lot there. I'm not really saying anything. I'm just throwing out more landmines, but there's a lot there that
Oh,
goes.
yeah. That's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. You just did throw out a landmine,
Oh
didn't you?
yeah.
A
Oh yeah.
landmine that we should. I'm so tempted. I'm so tempted to jump into that landmine
Yeah, that is
and
so
just go
tempting.
right in there and discuss that. I'm so tempted. I feel like I really want to get a little academic with you for a moment,
Yeah,
but
you
I'm
know
not
what?
sure if I should give in to that temptation.
Yeah, I definitely threw it out there. That's for sure. I definitely threw the right bait out there for sure. No, it's definitely a discussion needs to be had. I'm certainly not right, but I am right in a sense of that. the assuming theology shapes the mind,
Yeah.
assuming that, then there is and assuming black and white is a thing, there's a black theological mind, and then there's a white theological mind when it comes to economics. I'm just bringing it back to economics again. When it comes to socio things, when it comes to that, I'm not talking about the theology in itself, but I am talking about how that theology will then warp my understanding or influence my understanding of how God should behave in economics.
Sure. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, gosh, we could spend a couple hours talking about that. I think I wonder yeah, to what degree that shapes our conception of God, and to what degree is God different? Or are we referring to the exact same God? Here's where we get, yeah. I
Great
mean,
questions.
this
Great
is to
questions.
what extent, I mean, it feels like, gosh,
Yeah.
I'm really tempted. It feels
Yeah.
like there's a transcendent, imminent sort of conflation here
Absolutely.
that may be real, and in terms of who God is, and the economics of the situation in the imminent domain become foregrounded in such a way that the transcendence of God becomes that.
Yeah.
And when it's not that, then, well, that raises all sorts of concerns about
Plenty.
God, who he is.
Plenty.
Is it more about God who he is in relation to the people? Is he a different God really in that sense, or is he truly different? I mean, or is he only known in his acts, and so his acts are different? Apparently, on at least from our phenomenological perspectives, they're different,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
So this
Absolutely.
gets into the whole question about like liberation theology and how that. See, we're about to get
Yeah.
nerd.
Yeah.
We're about to nerd out here a little bit,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we
And
probably shouldn't go there. I'm
uh,
not sure. We're delving
yeah.
into a realm that
And
your audience may start to fall asleep at the moment.
yeah.
They
And
may
then
want to
you'll have to
tune
bring up
out right
liberation
now.
gospels. You had to bring up
That's
liberation
right.
gospels after that and how to
That's right.
interpret them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
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 That's right.
Yeah, that's a
Yes.
fun subject that we're talking about there. That is we'll have to do that. We'll have to do that on one of your shows for sure. Another one of your shows. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
For
great.
sure.
That'd be great.
That'd be absolutely great for sure. Because it needs to be discussed. Like personally, I've had to, so I'm gonna say this and get your thoughts on it. In order for me to start making real money, the first thing I do is I had to get rid of the God of my parents. It's the first thing I had to do because they were broke. Then the
Uh,
second thing I do is get rid of the God of my community because I'm from the hood. Only white people are wealthy. Only
uh,
white people do this. And if you're going to be making money in the hood, there's a certain way to do that. And it comes with certain risk, and then your life expectancy is 26. And if you make
mm,
it that far, you're probably going to spend the rest of your life in prison. So I had to get rid of that God. Then I had to get rid of the God of Texas in itself. And this is crazy the way it sounds, but Texas has this lone starness about it. I had to get rid of that. Then I had to actually get rid of the God that my pastor taught. Now,
uh,
this is a little bit different for me, y'all. For me, my to not conflate the issue. My the I didn't get introduced to church in 14, but that teaching
mhm,
was God is everything on earth is bad, everything in heaven is good. The world is bad. God's going to come now and destroy the world. Man is bad.
mm,
Just complete Gnosticism, complete everything. And it's non-denomination, but it was all about if you ever get any money, Dr. Farris, you're going to lose your soul. Ever. So now when it comes to the I had to release the God of my pastor. I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. I'm talking about me, because my pastor was let's just say the church is closed down. They don't even have services. Just to make this clear, there's not even a service in this church anymore due to.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to be respectable about it, but I'm not telling this for everybody, just me. And then the last God I had to release was the God of America, because the God of America told me, here's where Black people belong in finances. So
Mm.
that's five different gods that I had to release myself of to actually have not only a healthy relationship with money, but a healthy relationship with God, God's self. And there in that is some of your conversations. That's
Mhm.
and of course, I'm not bringing up. I am absolutely not talking about Bible not being infallible or anything like that. I'm talking about the interpretations and what's being preached from said text.
Yeah.
And it was completely different than what my white brothers and sisters get. Completely different. Completely different. To be poor was to be holy, where I come from. It was a virtue, it was an act of Christ-like.
Mm. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, we could open up a whole different
A
discussion here.
bunch there.
I
It's a
mean,
bunch there.
yeah, there are, yeah. I mean, we see that in your book, it's difficult to extricate the issues of economy from virtue and religion itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I think if I don't do it in this book, I'm pretty sure I do it in the second or third. I'm not sure. But one of these books, oh, I'm about to get in trouble. One of these books, I claim through statistics. When you think about it, Dr. That these ain't just landmines. Where my feet are blown off my ankles right now. Okay, I'm exploding here. When you think about the fact that the Black church brings in $25 billion a weekend
Yeah.
since 1705, yet Black wealth is 1%, only 1% greater as a collective since 1705. And when you think about,
Say that again.
yeah,
I think I missed that.
Black wealth is 1% greater today in 2024 than it is in 1705. I put all the statistics are literally, I give you
Hmm.
all the data, and we carry
That's
25.
wild.
Yeah, it's wild. We get 20. Well, here's how wild it is. By every major economist and every major reputable tier one news company has already reported. You could, if everybody Googles Black wealth by 2050, Black wealth by 2050 would be at a net zero. That's slavery. That's what slavery was. We The net worth of a Black person during American slavery was zero. That's crazy. That's crazy. It's crazy when you think
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
in 30 years, Black wealth would be at zero or negative.
Hmm.
That's insane. That's insane. That is absolutely preposterous, mind-boggling. It really is. So I'm making an argument that one of the things that us Black people need to get together and do is we need to change how we do church. One of
Yeah.
the worst, we need to absolutely change the way we do church. And one of the worst things about Black church is the finances. Because what does it mean to leave a legacy as a pastor in a Black church? It is to leave a really, it's to build a big edifice, to build a big building. People not gonna like them for to say, but it's all economics here. It's all facts.
Yeah.
For one, you're when that pastor leaves, that debt is still there for those members because the pastors is not the church, the members are the church. That debt is generational. This for
Uh-huh.
75 years, 30 years, that we're going to still be paying off this big edifice because you wanted to have a legacy. Okay, that's number one. Number two, it's not like we own the bank that
Yeah.
wherever whoever that mortgage is going to, we're literally taking black dollars and saying, hey, everybody, we need to meet payroll. So there's payroll, and only three people on the payroll, the pastor, the organist, and whatever assistant or something. So now you're taking black dollars that we've earned through hard labor or something, and you're collecting it in a pile, a collection, and you're giving it to the white bank that's going to then gentrify the entire neighborhood. This is why you have many of black churches. The people don't even live in the community where the church is. Don't even live there. They drive 25 miles to go to church and then they leave right back out. But they take their economy, bring it to the church, and then put it to a bank that's going to get a federal bailout for doing inappropriate practices. We have to change that. We have to change where, when it comes to the most successful black person in a community,
Yeah.
that's the pastor. That's something we need to change. That's not that would never be said in the white community. The most financially successful person in the white community better not be the pastor. But it is
Actually, yeah, yeah,
usually,
yeah. That's
yeah,
interesting. I mean,
it's
you almost have
usually,
like, yeah, that's right. You almost have the yeah, you almost have the what's the right word I'm thinking of? Inverse, but not that's not the right word, but you almost have the inverse in the white community.
yeah,
Um, Interesting. You have this sort of poverty theology in many of the churches with respect to the pastors.
right.
I remember
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not supposed to get paid no money when you're a
oh,
pastor.
you're not supposed
Shame
to be
on you.
paid no money.
Yeah, yeah.
You're
Shame
supposed
on
to
you.
be in poverty.
Yes,
Your family's supposed to be in poverty as well.
absolutely. And you're
Yeah, that's
supposed to
right.
enjoy it. You're
That's
supposed to enjoy it.
yeah, that's right. That's spiritual. That's virtuous. Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, yes,
There's a
right.
different takeover issues. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And you're supposed to like it. And how dare you sell your book? And don't promote your book in church.
No,
Don't
no, no, you
you
don't do
dare
that.
sell your
No,
book.
no, no. You better
Yeah.
give it away for free.
You
Um,
better.
you better give it away for free. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. It's true. Yeah, 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 yeah. There is a lot of that. There is a lot of that. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, well, you do. I don't know what to think of this. You do have similar theology with people who are financially struggling.
Yeah.
Rather than the church being a help, it's almost like, well, thank God you're in that position where you can financially struggle. Um, no matter where you've come from, no matter how hard you've worked, no matter what you've done, um, almost blinded to the sort of social and economic realities in that particular present moment. But yeah, thank God you're struggling.
Right.
You can well, I mean, actually, to some extent, I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
this is
It's
where
true.
things get a bit corrupted and manipulated.
For sure.
I remember it reminds me, it's a parallel. This is where theology becomes dangerous. I remember at one of the Christian schools that I worked at, one of my supervisors said to me, um, because there was financial uh, problems. And
Mhm.
so, ironically, there were a whole bunch of layoffs, so non-renewals. And and one of the supervisors said, it's all in God's providence. This this is it's all in, he said this, it's all in God's uh uh uh, uh providence. Um uh this is just God has another plan for you. And
So
and
disrespectful.
and I was thinking, yeah, I thought to myself, yeah, well, maybe God does, but that has nothing to do with you.
No. No.
And it's interesting how theology gets kind of manipulated in a way similarly. in our church context where we think, well, if we're in a poverty-stricken situation,
Yeah.
we kind of look at that. No doubt God can use that. I mean, my theology tells me, yeah, of course God can use that. I can learn from it.
There's a
I've
few
learned,
scriptures
I've
that
learned
say
a
God can
lot
use it.
times
Yeah.
when I've been poor, and I've learned a lot from it at
Yeah.
certain seasons of my life when I've been poor.
Yeah. May they
Um,
stay seasons. May they stay
Hopefully
seasons.
there's, that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. Oh, I hope so. Yeah. So, but to turn that around, ah, there's something, there's a fine line of that becoming really sort of corrupted
Sure.
theology.
It's
Uh,
absolutely corrupted theology. It's diminishing the wealth, the power of the it's diminishing the fact that God wants you to do well, which is like when you if you break down the Bible in simplicity. Let's see. We can do I can do three inappropriately simple statements to break down the Bible. Get inside my will, I'll get inside yours. Okay, that's one. We can do that one. Let's see what else. The entire Bible is a story of prosperity.
mhm.
Like genuinely, from Genesis chapter 1 all the way to Revelation chapter 22 is a story of
Yeah.
prosperity. But then
Yeah.
you can't say, you know, so if I say, then that's the diminishing of the prosperity of God and what God had planned for your life, then they're going to call me a prosperity preacher, even though the entire story of the Bible is redemption, and redemption is a prosperous thing. And the mere fact
Uh-huh.
that God gave you life or life or blessings, to borrow from Dr. Ben Blackwell, that then gave you
Yeah.
descendants in the land to operate in that. You're
Uh-huh.
supposed to
Right.
be the head and not the tail, and blah blah blah. So when someone, not to say he did this, but this is how I'm going to say it, for someone to completely denigrate
Yeah.
that situation, and it's tone deaf to what you're going through for sure, because he got paid. The guy telling you that got his check and then
Uh-huh.
told you about the providence of God. Right? So,
That's right.
yeah, you can't forget that part. He didn't get
No,
laid off.
that's right. That's right. No, no, no. I'm not sour. I'm hesitant to bring up situations like that, especially in contexts where we're discussing, because I realize the perception of that can be taken a certain way. But
Yeah,
that was such an apropos sort of an analogy for
yeah,
that that was really meaningful. So, I mean, it really taught me something meaningful
sure
about
do.
theology and the misuse of theology.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I'm not bitter about it. It's just it's humorous to me
yeah.
now, and it just I understand. I get it, and I get why people would say that. They're thinking they're saying something comforting.
Right, right. It's not. It's not
It's
comforting at
not.
all.
It's not.
No,
But anyway,
no.
I well, let's turn back around,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not focus on that, but
But
let's
you're not
turn
saying
back
anything
around.
bad, but they're gonna say you are, though, for sure.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So we've covered a lot of ground.
This is fun.
We've gone longer than I actually intended, which is fine. I kind of figured that might happen. And we might still have to have about 10 episodes because we have so much more to discuss just from volume one, let
Yeah,
alone volume two, which
yeah.
I'm going to have to read volume two as well.
And
Or
that's the one
is
that's
it
gonna
for
take.
me? Yes,
That one
for
deals
me,
all with
right?
racism. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're gonna you're definitely getting a copy, a free copy, a signed copy. That one deals with racism, so that one's gonna be. Ooh, that one's and the crazy thing is that one I think I only have 475 sources in that one. Well,
Uh-huh.
only 475. Like, it's a
That's
lot.
a
That's a
lot.
lot.
That's enough.
Yes. Yeah. But
Uh-huh.
the crazy
Yeah.
thing is because I couldn't find them. It was easy to find sources about money. I could not find them like it was easy for me to find them about racism.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
it was gloriously difficult. to
Mhm.
find those resources. So that one, that first half, it's called Facts of the Black Oppression. So we deal with that and the problems facing the white ally. And the second half deals with that. So that one is definitely, and that comes out May 25th, 2 weeks from now. That
Oh,
one
quick.
definitely,
That's
yeah,
coming soon.
yeah. That one
Very soon.
definitely is going to be a landmines. We got to call it something else. So we need to, these need to be cluster mines, nuclear bombs. We're going to have to walk through on that one. But it's written in the same tone as this book. It's just presenting how we got here, how we got here.
Mhm.
But of course, nobody likes self-reflection, introspection. Nobody, nobody likes that. People,
No, no, it's painful. It's
yeah,
hard.
yeah, people get angry.
And um, yeah, and if you raise questions, it's awkward. Um,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
comfortable with raising questions, but I've had to tone myself down. You like questions, so
Mhm.
that's why we
I
get
love them.
along.
Yeah,
We can hang out so much, but we could hang out.
yeah, absolutely.
But
And I like being wrong because I like getting better. Right, I'm
yeah,
addicted to getting better. Yeah.
and that's okay. Yeah, and so I know I've had to tone down my questions over the years. When I was younger, I was like this still. I was still very much introspective. I was always very introspective, um, and I would ask questions. But in my environments, a lot of my environment is, kind of middle class, which you'd consider middle class white. Um, and I asked questions, but it was very awkward. It was almost socially awkward. So I've had to learn not
Of
to do
course you
that.
did. Yeah,
Um, this is
yeah.
getting off topic a little bit, but that's okay. I was, when you were talking about God, this is an interesting subject. Maybe we'll come back to this on your show or on mine in the future. I'm sure it'll come up again,
It's
but
gonna be fun.
the
Whatever it
kind
is,
of,
it's gonna be fun.
yes, yeah, that's right. The
Yeah,
kind of understanding of God and how the complex way in which that raises the question about what are we talking about? Who are we
sure.
worshiping?
Yeah,
What are we referring to when we worship God? That whole fascinating question about, there is a different God for these different Christian groups is
yeah.
fascinating. It
That's
reminded
fascinating.
me of, have you listened to that guy? He's a brilliant songwriter. He's kind of a poet. Benjamin Francis Leftwich.
No,
Last
I don't think
before the
so.
snowstorm. His album Last Smoke Before the Snowstorm.
Okay, I'm gonna look him up.
Uh,
Okay, I'm interested now.
he's a white guy, but
Oh,
um,
I'm very eclectic when it comes to my reading and my music. So,
well, his lyrics are really good. They might make they're so good they might make it into one of your books in the future. I mean, it's
cool.
kind of like there are very. I mean, we don't have the great philosophers and great poets like history past. The great
Right.
philosophers and great poets these days,
Yeah.
well, tend to be kind of songwriters and
That's a good comedians too. You got to put comedians in there.
comedians. Yeah, that's
Comedians are great thinkers.
yeah, they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And I mean, history past. I mean, if you're looking at higher culture, they would look at that and say, well, you know, we kind of have this low culture uh, entertainment system that has fed us kind of um, the poets and the philosophers of the day. Um, the one of the poets I think of as a poet of today, and even almost something of a prophet, less of a prophet, more of a poet,
Right.
is Jelly Roll. You know Jelly Roll? Well,
Mhm.
he's got great lyrics.
Yeah.
He's a great song.
Absolutely. Yep.
He's brilliant. But anyway, Benjamin, he
Absolutely
reminded me
brilliant.
of a conversation just a moment ago because he sings in a couple of different songs about different gods. Uh, parents' God and how his parents' God was a different God from the God he has. And then he
Sure.
sings about the God of his past and the God of the God that he knows now that he knows this love in his life.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was kind of a tangent, but it was
It's
important. It
fair.
made me think of our conversation just a moment ago.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, it's a interesting. Should we bring this around to a summation? Because I feel like there's about 100 different topics.
It's so many. It's so many. I
Left.
guess you should at some point you'll have to relieve your bladder, so you may want to.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a contribution, and I want to read other parts of it again and probably have another conversation.
And I appreciate that as a world-renowned scholar that you are. You don't use the word contribution lightly, sir.
No, I don't. Your audience must know that when an academic says contribution, that's a compliment.
And there we have it. It's definitely a compliment. That's a big compliment, for God's sakes.
Yes.
Huge
So,
one.
um, yeah, your book raised a lot of important questions. It raised a lot of questions and interesting questions. It answered a lot, and I like the tact. I like the approach.
Yeah.
There's very much a positive approach and a solution toward the end in chapter 12,
Right,
right?
right,
And
right. And the tack was very important to me because it wasn't meant to be divisive.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was never meant to be divisive.
yeah, right. And I think, yeah, that's great. I think that's
Yeah.
great. And it really displays, whether it was intentional or unintentional, I don't know, but either way, it was really displays the interplay between these big issues and economics itself as it impinges on specifically your focus, which is the Black community in the US.
Absolutely.
But all these other issues are at play in very important ways. Religion, ethics and virtue, social dynamics are all at play in in economy. And
Absolutely.
um, and of course, there's a complex question about how all those relate to one another.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it's good, it's challenging, it's really interesting, and I hope we can have further discussions about some of these issues in the
Oh
future.
yeah. Would be wonderful to do so. Sure would be. Sure would be. I like to end by bringing up something I wanted to bring up earlier, but I think it's pretty cool to bring it up now. That J.P. Morgan, Blackstone, Goldman Sachs, they
Mhm.
own most of the single family homes in America today. The largest landowner in America is Bill Gates. The second largest landowner in America is Jeff Bezos. The 33% of the state of Georgia is owned by Blackstone. Single family homes. 34% of Texas is owned by single family homes. So what's happening is in 2012, Blackstone acquired 80,000 single family homes. In 2021,
Uh-huh.
they
Wow.
spent 6 billion on single family homes. JP Morgan Chase, as I said, they own it. Wall Street is a major competitor in the single family home market. And this is why I wrote Resegregation in the manner in which I did, because 12 billionaires control the housing market.
Mm.
There's something inherently wrong with that. Now, as a capitalist, go for it. No problem. Make your money. But I'm not saying there's something wrong with them having it. I'm thinking about the exchange of wealth that must happen to get that back. And I'll explain it this way. And then this is the last thing I'll say. This is going to be very difficult, very easy to understand, but very difficult because the poignant truth of it is just visceral.
Yeah.
If I want to control an industry, let's put me over music. Okay. Actually,
Mhm.
we could use real estate. I could keep it in real estate. Then my job is to keep you cash poor, but asset rich. So now when you want to be like me and have money, then I say, well, Dr. Farris, buy it back. Right. So now you buy it, but now you're asset rich and cash poor. And this is what you see in the music industries. You see the record companies own the assets, and they give you loans and keep you with cash. And when you say, "Well, I want my masters," buy it back, right? I want this, buy it back, there, right? And then you got to spend all your money. Now you're broke, but you got this thing, but
Yeah.
you can't pay your lavish lifestyle with the thing you have now. This is how we trap people. And this is what's happening in the real estate market right now, which is why I'm bringing it up, which is why I think powernomics is not a black thing. Excuse me, the power matrix is not a black thing. It's a
Yeah.
100% everybody thing.
Right. Right.
When it's time to go buy those houses, y'all,
Yeah.
you're going to give up your money, then go get in more financial debt that they're going to convince you is good debt, but it's a lie. Because to buy a single family home, that money has to come out of your pocket. That's not good debt. Buy a single family home and your customers pay for that. Now that's good debt. That's good debt now. But if it comes out of your pocket, it's bad debt. And now
Yeah.
you're going to be asset rich again, but
Right.
cash poor, and it's billionaires who are controlling it. Something's wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
I think that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
That
Gosh,
has no color attached to it.
we've the middle classes, middle class, upper middle class has really bought into that, right?
Yeah,
That is yeah, it's a shame.
it is.
I mean, maybe yeah, I don't know what to say. I mean about that. It's a it's a big belief. It's a big, I guess it's a big lie then
It is.
a lot of people have bought into. Um, and we're about to see. I wonder what's going to happen with the housing market. They keep the experts keep saying the housing market's going to go down soon. It has to go down, and I don't know, but um, I wonder if you would say. I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong about getting in debt yourself to have assets, but being money poor. Um, if there's any distinction between that and say
Sure it
buying
is.
cars, I would, I loathe buying cars right
Yeah,
now.
you should.
And I mean, we've managed on one car. It has most of the time you know, it's been okay. I mean, because both
Yeah,
have working from home, so we can manage it fairly well.
it's a
But
wise decision too.
yeah, so we're unusual, especially in the community we live in, to have one car is
Yeah,
unusual. It's very unusual. Not to say that's not, I'm not saying it's virtuous, but well, maybe there's some virtue in it. But um
it
uh
makes you less of a slave. That's
yeah,
for sure.
I mean, I appreciate that. I
Yeah,
appreciate yeah,
that's for sure. Yeah,
they're uh I mean they're awful investments.
they're awful. Unless you're buying a collectible,
Yeah,
one of those cars, the moment you buy it, it goes up in value, a
that's right.
1910 Chevy something or something. Well, I don't even know. Something like that. Yeah. It's absolutely
Yeah,
terrible investment. A
that's
terrible investment.
that's right. Yeah, I mean, I would say at one level, I want to say, well, given what you're saying, it almost it almost flatlines the kind of situation. But at another level, I want to say it's it's still a little better maybe to have a house than a car, right? Because at least with a house, it's a if you have a this is where the my whole localist philosophy kicks in to some extent. At least with a house, you work in your house, you have that space, you can generate. If
Okay.
you have a productive home, right? You're trying to make it a productive home.
Okay.
You're generating quality, you're generating food in your backyard, you're generating water, which
Okay.
I plan to
Makes
have
sense. Makes
source
sense.
here shortly. But
If you do that,
you're
you're
actually
old
generating
gold.
things.
Your own gold. Water is the new gold. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's better, but I mean, even it maybe it's better, but still, if you had to go into a lot of debt for that till you can pay it off, right? That's a pretty hefty debt.
You're an obedient slave. Is what you are.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
to say it accurately. So let's say someone like you. I remember, I think like a billionaire. This is my plot in life is I've accomplished things.
Yeah.
You're a homeowner. That means you're a slave. You're a
Yep.
better slave than being a homeowner with the two cars and the, all the with the $15,000 of credit card debt, and you got to have the. So you're far better off than most people. But here's how you get out of it.
Mm.
The trap of home ownership is keeping the prestige of middle class, which means that you've been taught that don't mess with the equity in your house.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst things you could possibly do because money has no value unless it's moving. So if you want to really make your like richest man in Babylon would say, one of the rules of money is to make your dwelling a profitable investment. If you really want to make your dwelling a profitable investment, take the equity out your house. Let's say you got $32,000 in equity. Okay, they're going to give you LTV 80%, so you can go get a HELOC, home equity line of credit. So that's what 32. You're going to get $26,000. It's not going to be taxed, and you're not going to pay taxes on it because you're going to take that $26,000. You're going to take your butt to the bank. You're going to tell them I need $100,000 loan, and then you're going to put that $100,000 down on an apartment complex. It could be 6 units, and those 6 units are going to pay for your house. Problem solved. Now, those 6 units, 4 units, a duplex for God's sakes, they're going to pay off your house. Now you're no longer in that debt.
Mm. Mm.
And the apartment is going to pay off the apartment. You're no longer in that debt. Then you wait 2 years, equity goes back down on this one. The renters are paying for that equity loan. Now the equity goes down in the apartment, and you do it again. Now, when you take the money out this time, now you set your daughter up for generational wealth because you're just going to do it again. What they've taught you is be a
Yeah.
good slave and save your money.
Right.
But we know 1913 stopped saving money.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
advice worked before we instituted the Federal Reserve. Now
Yeah.
you can't save yourself the wealth. So if
That's
I were you, I'd absolutely, anybody listen, take your equity out your house. If you can Google it right now, there's 27 trillion, $2 trillion of equity locked
yeah.
up in
Yeah.
American real estate right now. That's $2 trillion the banks are using that you're not. How
Yeah.
dare you love your country so much? And I'm with the 2 wars. How dare you love your country so much that you're going to let them borrow your money and you don't borrow your money? That's crazy. That's crazy. No. I don't love my country that much.
Point.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
that makes plenty of sense.
A lot of
Get your money moving. Don't let the
sense.
bank move your money.
That's
You
right.
move your money too.
Right.
Yeah, and that's how you solve your problem. And you can do that. You've got the credit. Only thing you'll need is a mentor that will walk you through the right deal. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
Because in order to buy real estate, you're going to buy a property. You're not worried about distressed properties. We're trying to get something 4 units and above, 6, 7 units. We're going to
Yeah.
get it already cash flowing. We're not trying to buy someone's problems. We're trying to buy someone's asset.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
So we're going to get an already income producing asset, and then you're going to raise the rents like everybody else does. You're going to raise the rents to fair market value. And now you are the controller of debt instead of you own debt, the controller of debt instead of having debt.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Right.
My
Right.
book teaches that. My book teaches that throughout every chapter. It absolutely teaches that. The goal
Right.
is for you to take your life back. And I'm not saying you don't have control of your life, but you know,
Sure.
I'm, I am the fighter of the middle class, and I can tell you for sure that your government, bless your government,
Uh-huh.
has used you enough.
Uh-huh.
You get to now use them back,
Yes.
and that's patriotic.
That's patriotism. Yeah.
That's patriotism.
Right.
Like, yeah, that's patriotism.
I
It's a
love my,
100%.
I'm going to take control back. I love my
That's
country.
right. That's right. That's right. You do better off for your country wealthy than for you to be in the middle class.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I think, man. I just
Message. And that's the message of your book.
Yep, absolutely. It's in there. It's 100%. In fact, I think in chapter 8 or something, I talk about how you go start your own bank. It's absolutely in there. It's absolutely in there. 100%.
I need to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
How do you start
Yeah.
your own bank? I'd like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should
Yep.
all do that, right?
That's right. We should all do that. We should all do that. And I give the steps how to do it because I'm in the process of doing it.
Yes.
It's why I behave the way I behave. It's why I act the way I act.
Yes.
It's why I make the moves I make.
I like it. I
Yep.
like it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
Chapter
sir.
8, Innovative Approaches to Black Wealth Creation.
There you go. And I want to say it's chapter 8. If it's not, it's right. But in there, there's a whole section of how to start a bank.
Excellent.
There's a
Excellent.
whole section. Yep.
So
Absolutely.
I read that too.
That's why the book's been so popular that people who have actually read it, like you, are like, wait a minute. This guy's saying something. You know,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Right.
wait a minute. This
Uh-huh.
isn't, I thought this was going to be toxic. No, I'm not a toxic person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a toxic person. But
Yeah.
somebody had to have the conversation, and I have the fortitude to have the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
That's how I see it.
That's good. Well, very
Mhm.
good.
Thank you, man. This has been wonderful. I appreciate you. Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. This has been
It
a great
has. It
conversation.
sure has.
Yeah, I
It
really
sure
appreciate
has.
it. A lot of energy. Yeah, I appreciate it. Lots of good things here. 11:30. Yeah, we've been going 2.5 hours.
Two and
That's
a
good.
half hours. Man,
That's
they're gonna think we're smart people. They're gonna think we actually know something. Yeah.
Yeah, we should pick up on some of these topics again.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. I
Uh,
agree.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Yeah,
Yes,
good to
sir.
see you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. I know we gotta get out. I guess any closing statement. I gave my closing statements. Do you have any closing
I
statements?
I think you gave your closing statement, and I th- I think I tried to give a closing statement, wrap it up, basically that it's yeah, well, I mean, I think we summed it up quite well in terms of the big picture of volume one, and um and then some of the underlying issues that we didn't even hardly touch on yet that we'll have to touch on another time.
Yeah.
But also, we touched on an important issue, I think, of the interrelationship between economics and social dynamics, religion, virtue, ethics, and these sorts of issues that are all, I think, at one level, to varying degrees, all interrelated somehow.
Sure.
And that's a complex sort of web
Yeah.
of um, interconnectedness. And so I think that those are some of the highlights of our conversation today. So yeah, we probably do need at least 10 other episodes to
That's about right.
discuss in more depth or focus on some other big picture issues, as well as jumping into volume two and then volume three. We need to touch on those two. Yeah, yeah. So we'll have to meet again.
Yes, sir. I shall appreciate you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir. Yes, sir.